G'day, it's Simo and Ed, and we're going to talk to you today about our takeaways from 2021.
Well, it's one of those areas, people in business, we do a lot of planning and we do a lot of moving forwards all the time, but it's worth just looking backwards occasionally.
Yeah, great to reflect. So, you're with Simo and Ed, and it's the Fast Line Track Growth Show. And today we're talking about takeaways from 2021.
Cool.
So let's take it away.
Well, we were talking earlier, weren't we? And I'll start with the biggie, I suspect. And there's lots of other very interesting things over the next couple of videos that you want to get involved in. But the big takeaway to start with, and the thing that really made 2021 a success when it might not have been, was committing to a goal.
Absolutely. Committing to a goal is so important.
Yep.
Because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. Spoke about it in previous videos, but there was a call, wasn't there? It was we just laid out all the plans for the whole of 2021. Very, very quickly we got into COVID. Everything was shutting down again, and we had quite a tense call. And I think I said the immortal line, well, you just told me just a short while ago that you were going to deliver this, so I don't care that the environment's changed. And that conversation there, it would have been so easy just to stop, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would have been such the wrong thing to do, as well as we now know. But remember, at the time, we didn't know that this was going to be the situation, but it's just turned out to work so well. So once you commit to a goal, in this instance, it was a monetary goal that we focused in on because there was so many other unknowns in there. We just set about going about making sure that happened this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we were planning for this video, and I wrote down point number 10, I turned to you and I said, I think this is important. And I said, because if I wasn't doing that, 2020 and 2021 would have turned out completely differently.
Absolutely.
So, committing to goal, very important.
Huge, absolutely huge.
And it can be, goals can come in many shapes, forms. Ours was a financial goal in terms of sales and profitability. It could be a lifetime goal, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It could be, you want that new car, you want that new house.
Well, you want elements of everything in there, so I'd start off with lifestyle. Well, I do. That's just the way I prefer to do it, but I talk about time. Some people will start with the money. I know one other guy that starts with the holidays, and I know more than one other guy that does that, actually. So you start wherever you want to go and start, but a good plan will have elements of everything in there. So it'll have elements of the finance, it'll have something probably around cash flow if you really get to that level of detail. It'll probably have an idea of how many customers it'll take to get there. It'll probably have an idea around the team involved and what they might be getting involved in. So you just start to develop that, really.
Well, we've been doing this over the last couple of months with Fastline, haven't we? And, And it started with what I want to do, and then we worked it backwards. And in fact, speaking of holidays, when we did the marketing calendar, what were the first two bits of paper that went up there?
Holidays, I'm hoping.
It was. I whacked a holiday in August. 2 weeks for the wife and kids. And my son wants to go skiing. Now, I haven't been skiing for 30 odd years.
Blimey.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing for someone who used to do it as a job.
Oh, absolutely.
So in February 2023, I've got a skiing holiday booked.
Cool. This is what I love to hear.
So it's really cool. So, what's the next takeaway?
One of the things that we've realised with reflection, really, but we've already been aiming towards that, is a sense of a strong community within the sector that you operate in. It's a really bloody smart idea.
Yeah.
And I think that one of our takeaways from last year is we need to just keep focusing on building community. And it can be through videos like this. Thanks for joining us.
The Mechanics Academy, our newsletter, the Karting Spectaculars. And this isn't a short-term or medium-term thing. It is a long-term.
This is
you've got to commit yourself to this, and you've got to keep going. Speaking to one of the sales guys yesterday, and he's just won a new customer over in the States.
Good.
Because he rang this customer, they were having problems with their belts of all things. So he sent them this belt breakage guide. That explains that, well, have a look at the way the belt broke, then reference it back to this guide, and it'll give you ideas for where to look to fix it. He did that. he's put him into the mechanics academy, and the guy's going like, oh wow, I've got all these problems from another from another supplier that hasn't been able to answer them, and boom, you've done it. So I'll tell you what, I can buy from you.
Oh, excellent.
And it takes a while for it to happen, but then it snowballs.
Yeah.
But the other thing I've noticed that in times of trouble, it's even more important. So when we're in lockdown and things like that, we'd just come out of our first spectacular, and we bandied together as an industry in the Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Just discussed our concerns, our fears, and what the opportunities were on the other side.
Well, I know we talked a lot about how people could interact with their database and keep customers loyal to them. We talked a lot around what would the emerging world look like last year. We were trying to piece it together, and that consensus just lets people understand that they are on the right track rather than trying to work it out on their own.
Yeah.
So that worked really, really well. We should perhaps look at doing more of those Zoom calls, perhaps.
Perhaps. It's always having time to do that. And trying to get 109 different countries on at the same time.
Yeah, we can work it out. Good. So a strong community has been one of the takeaways.
Yeah.
Is a really smart idea. Is one of the takeaways from last year.
Point number 3.
We've worked out panicking gets you nowhere.
No.
There was mass panic, and understandably last year and the year before. I mean, crikey, it's been tough, hasn't it, the last couple of years?
Oh yeah, I was guilty of that. There was a couple of days that were like really dark for me. This is prior to Boris announcing the furlough. The payments for furlough is a scheme where the UK government paid 80% of the wages of company staff.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at putting 12 families out in the street.
Yeah.
Which didn't sit well with me.
No.
And it is not wouldn't have made me very happy. So I had those panic days. We had a conversation.
As we do.
And you change your perspective. I knew panicking was going to get me nowhere. And quite often, if I get into that situation where the stress levels are coming up, where I'm starting to panic, I've just got to get away, clear my head, and then come back and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes.
I think if you are in those panic situations, you're using the available information around you in that moment. So if you are in a panic ever in your business, it's easy. Well, it's probably easy at the time that you listen to this video. You're probably not listening to this video if you're in a blind panic right now. No. There is a possibility, but I don't think it will be happening. So when you are in those panic situations where everything's piling in on top of you, typically you're trying to make decisions just based on the information that's just to hand.
Yeah, you're very reactionary.
Yeah.
Whereas if you take a moment, take a breath, you can start to
tap into creativity essentially,
and be proactive rather than reactive. And you're always going to get a better result when you're proactive as opposed to be reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just got to remember that panicking gets us nowhere, and to spot it early on and make sure that we remove ourselves from the situation and find a better way to deal with it.
Yeah. Number 4, learning to embrace change.
Absolutely.
I put a triangle there. You didn't know what that was. That's shorthand, economic shorthand for change.
They can't see the triangle in there. That's the scientific shorthand for therefore. So I was going, learning how to embrace therefore. What are you talking about? I think there was some Greek fella that said the only constant is change, and then latterly it's been developed into a business saying. But yeah, the only constant in life is change, and learning how to embrace it is really, really smart. And it's only when we really get tested that you really get to understand these things. So one of the takeaways for last year is, blimey, we've got to get really good at embracing change.
Yeah.
And get comfortable with it.
It was constantly changing. I mean, just take the spectacular for a start.
I was about to say.
I mean, there has been 7 or 8 changes of location, changes of dates, changes of venues, and it was COVID, and the government's reaction to COVID. Yeah. You have to embrace it. You have to learn to live with it. You have to, learn to adapt it.
Developing resilience in business is really tough, and you need to be resilient, which will just help you cope with change. So whatever that looks like, I've made changes, or I'm about to in this year based on some of that. So I've got to get fitter. I put on a few COVID pounds.
Haven't we all?
I still haven't lost them. That's down to me. I know that will help. That will help me be more energetic, more resilient, better able to cope with change. When stuff occurs in business, we don't need to react all the time. Mm-hmm. I must drive you crazy sometimes, because I quite often sit in the office, and if there is something happening and it's all kicking off, I'm quite often laughing. And you might have seen that, and it's because, dare I suggest, I've got that resilience in me that can quickly see through stuff sometimes as well, and go, don't need to worry about that, because that even what they're talking about will change, so I don't get drawn in.
Yeah.
Or I start chuckling, and other times you'll see me quite animated about the smallest thing. You're like, what's going on? And I'm going, this is really important. If we don't get this bit right, everything else then starts to crumble away. And you'll often see me not reacting the way people would think you'd react in a normal situation. I'm going, this is storming teacup, even though everyone's trying to kill each other. And then at other times everything's going along really well. I'm going, whoa, what do you mean you just did that? No, we can't do this. So it's learning to spot as early as you can all the sort of triggers that affect change in the business, and just from your own point of view, learning how to react and when to take a breather, when to speed up, making sure that you're up for the challenge and getting there, whatever that takes.
I think the last 2 years that we've had, that is a very important skill to have. It's been such a fluid environment that if you don't change, you die.
I've had some dark times in business when I used to run my own big one, but you'll have your own way of sort of getting involved in this. I used to just look at things and break it down into small blocks of time. So I'm all right for the next few minutes. I'm all right for the next hour. I'm all right for the next day. Okay, right, tomorrow's another day. The sun will rise again. Cool, right, now I've got past that bit now, and then all of a sudden the environment changes, or everything's changing constantly, and quite often options then start to open up. So you'll have your own way of coping, I'm sure.
Point number 5.
Yep.
The staff that step up will sometimes surprise you.
Yes, this is so true, isn't it? I saw this a lot. I had it described to me once when people were talking about how people react in stress situations. So the old, is it Myers-Briggs and DISC and all that?
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan, by the way. I've just said that on camera, but it's true. I've got, but what it does do is it shows quite often how people can sometimes react in stressful situations. And quite often people that you think are just doing all the right stuff and are a safe pair of hands, when there's huge stress placed upon them, can do the weirdest and wildest things. And equally, the people that you think will never be there, which would be absolutely bloody useless in an emergency, suddenly you turn around, they're like, whoa, hang on a second. So you can be pleasantly surprised with the staff that step up during times of crisis.
There's nothing like the last 2 years to bring that out in a staff member.
Oh, crikey. And it doesn't have to be in the moment as well. I think particularly with COVID over the last couple of years, there's so many people, particularly before the festive period, were so tired. And I've got nothing to prove it, but I'm sure that it was just the lag from COVID and the stresses they'd been under, and just having the time to sort of get it all straight in their heads.
Yeah.
And I think that's ongoing even into this year. So I think for the first few months, my predictions, here we go, this will be good, make a prediction. But I think over the next sort of 6 to 12 weeks, I think COVID will become more and more of a backstory. My hope is that once we get into the summer, that it will be almost like a non-story. And it will try and surface again sort of the end of next year, end of 2022, but I don't think it will come back with fight the vengeance. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
But without the steely determination that this virus has had over the last couple of years, I think it's eased them.
What I found interesting is there has been a change in the press recently.
Yeah.
They're starting to question the numbers.
Yes. Well, they are in the UK. It depends where you are in the world. I suspect that's probably not quite the same in Australia, dare I suggest. The Americans, I suspect it depends what state you're in almost. And then you've got mainland Europe. They're still going absolutely crazy. France right now, as we're speaking, trying to impose all sorts of passports, and Macron this morning, while we were filming this, is threatening to put people in prison, I think.
Wow, we might have another French Revolution.
The way he's going, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think it's a great analogy, really, isn't it? Massive change is happening, and the reaction is this, and there's reactions coming out all the time from all the MPs. And in that situation, I feel like it's grabbing hold of Macron and going, should we just go for a beer and take a deep breath? I think you'll be out of this in a few weeks. And then that just leads to all sorts of things. But it has been a crazy year.
Yeah. And that kind of leads on to the point number 8, which we're going to talk about in the next video.
Yes, it will do.
I think in the next video there's even a lot more stronger points that are really important that have come out of this.
Yeah, well, it's the other points that bring all this stuff together. Yeah. So these are just sort of the first 5 takeaways. We've done 10 of them, probably some more, but we've just prioritised the top 10 takeaways. But the next video will start to bring some of this together to show you how we see it's all hanging together, because hindsight is nearly 100% correct.
All right, well, that's about a good point to end this video. So we will see you next week.
Catch you soon.
If you enjoyed what you've seen, hit the subscribe button, that little bell down below, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Ciao.